across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, it is good to have your company. It is Petrie here with you for the next couple of hours, and just to let you know what is coming up at midnight, we have the fabulous Amy Fisher, former Director of Comms for the Conservative Party. She'll be in looking through the newspapers for Thursday. We're going to be talking to Cody Darla, who normally comes in and does a paper review, but this time he's going to be looking for some more sort of those nuanced stories that don't ever make the front pages, those good news stories, some odd stories. He's going to be looking at those for us. We're also going to be talking to Adam French. He's going to be having a chat with us about money, and never has it been more important when we look at mortgage rates and savers, loyalty and all of those things, and how you can save yourself a bit of money as we head towards Christmas. But before that, I watched it, so you didn't have to. It's one of those moments. We're talking, of course, about the Tory party conference. Even my dog Humphrey was a little bit mesmerised by Kemi Badenoch's speech. Now, it has to be said, I was expecting something quite different. I thought she did quite well. I'm not a big, as you know, I don't like any politician of any persuasion, but the Conservative Party, Kemi Badenoch has delivered a passionate speech. It was a funny speech. It was, I thought, extremely well written. I don't know who by, but kudos. It was good. It was a good speech. She's also pledged one big pledge to abolish stamp duty on the purchase of main homes. Her 45-minute career-defining speech was packed with new headline-grabbing policies and was well received. So has she done enough to save her skin? Because Robert Jenrick, they kept flashing to him, of course, and James Cleverly, the two people most likely to push her into some kind of retreat so that they can take over the top slot. Jenrick did not look a happy bunny. He really didn't. He was grimacing and trying to smile. So did he see his chances of becoming leader slip away with every word that Kemi Badenoch spoke? Well, the man who was there and can tell us how it felt in the room is John Boothman, a political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland. John, you travelled south of the border for this.
I travelled south of the three things in Manchester this week. They had Andy Burnham in the carry-on at the Labour conference last week. They had Lady Gaga in Manchester last night. Oh, yeah. And they've had the Tories there all week. Look, Kemi Badenoch really needed that speech today, in much the same way as Keir Starmer needed the speech last week. The party's in a mess. It's been losing councillors and activists. We saw only yesterday, 20, was it, councillors defected to Reform. The activists, it's hard being a political activist in a political party, and, she gave them what they wanted. They wanted to hear something upbeat. You said, correctly, that she was amusing. She kind of won their hearts. There's lots and lots of doubts about her and her ability to lead the party. And she had, not just today, but the party kind of throughout the weeks had a kind of platform of solid policy offers, retail offers, that they can hope to win the public on. So it was good for her. It was good for the activists in the hall. The question, of course, is whether or not it will be good for the Tories in the opinion polls in the coming months, and that's what we're going to have to see. I think you're right. I think she probably dispelled the wolves from the door. Robert Jenrick, as you say, didn't particularly look happy. I saw James Cleverly in pictures tonight chortling a bit at some bits in the speech. So I think, those wolves are away from the door. But again, like Keir Starmer, much is going to depend on what happens in these elections next year, whether in Scotland and Wales and the London boroughs and local councils in England, and we'll see what happens at the end of it, because again, the person who, you know, we were all waiting to hear what she would have to say about Nigel Farage. She called him a pig. At least that's what I think she did. And there was very, very little else said about him, but he's there, hovering around in the background, really a spectre over Kemi Badenoch and Keir Starmer for next year.
Yeah, it's interesting because there was so much after the speech. There was so much made of the fact that she didn't really mention reform. We've got a clip here of the moment that she did, but I think this was the only time that she did. She was not going to give them the publicity. She was not going to make the same mistake as Keir Starmer did. So here she is talking about Nigel. Oh. All right, they're looking for the clip at the moment. I thought I was building up to that really nicely. But yeah, a lot was made of the fact that they didn't really talk about reform. But like I said, there was much made of how much Labour talked about it. So it wasn't really surprising to me.
See, this is interesting to me because whatever political party it is, I think there's a real difficulty if you talk about them, you give them the oxygen of publicity. Yeah. And here today, she's adopted a different tactic, and we're still talking about it.
Yeah.
So, you know, this is a difficulty that any political party has in relation to dealing with Farage. Farage is the guy who's setting the agenda. Farage is the guy who is talking the language that the public talks. Immigration, his big issues, are way up to the top of the agenda. And even today, you know, you're back to that thing that, again, you know, the Tories have announced this raft of policies. The stamp duty thing was new and a surprise today. But, you know, the other stuff the Tories have been talking about, the ECHR, that European Convention on Human Rights, and getting rid of it, and immigration, those remarks by Robert Jenrick that he had been to Birmingham and in 90 minutes had failed to see a white face. And it will be interesting to see, of course, the Tory conference is in Birmingham next year. Nigel Farage is setting the agenda, and still you have this difficult situation where I think neither party knows quite how to handle them.
Yeah, we got that clip now, so let's have a listen to her, the moment that she did mention. It was a funny line, actually. I did laugh. So here's Kemi.
But we can't beat them simply by attacking them. As George Bernard Shaw said, never wrestle with a pig. You both get dirty, and the pig likes it. We have to offer something better.
So yeah, I think she did call him a pig. I think that's fairly safe to say. But you know, when you're talking about Robert Jenrick just then, just before we played that clip, and you know, he had spoken first. Of course, he did his speech before her, because it's tradition that the leader of the party does a speech last, and. I felt that he felt that he had taken that away from her, that he had announced these big things. But he didn't, did he? Because she seemed to command that leadership role. I thought, I've never seen her do quite so well. In fact, the last time I saw her do this well was when she was fighting for the job in the first place. So she can pull it out of the bag when she needs to.
Well, she had to. You know, you have to remember, a week ago we were talking about a challenge. We were talking about the possibility that that might happen soon. I think the first time that could actually happen is in the beginning of November this year.
Yeah.
Under the Conservative Party
it's
rules.
After a year, isn't it?
We shouldn't underestimate that, you know, any of the polling that we've seen, you know, a lot of polling within the Conservatives seems to suggest that she's not exactly universally popular as a leader. She certainly hasn't been setting the heather on fire, to use that Scottish expression, in terms of either, you know, coming up with policy ideas, but more particularly arresting the decline that the Tories are in. You know, let's not forget that the Tories are back there in third place by and large in most of the polling that you've seen even in the last month in a dozen or so polls. You know, Nigel Farage is sitting at 30, Labour sitting at about 20, and the Tories are kind of sitting below that. So the party is not in a good place at all. And again, you know, I don't think expectations were high, but she kind of delivered the best speech that she's delivered since she became leader. As I say, she needed that. And, you know, if you're a political activist, a party activist, and you're going along to a political conference, you want to be leaving that conference. You gird your loins, right? You want to be leaving that conference with a bit of oomph, a bit of, you know, something that you can cling to, a bit of enthusiasm that you can take away within yourself, you know, because these people have got to go back to their constituencies, to their localities, to chap doors, to kind of engage in the normal political fights that they've had. And if you've had a torrid time and fellow councillors are leaving and party members are leaving, and you see, in the case of the Conservatives, donors leaving, and leaving with the money that they bring, then it's a pretty depressing kind of place. So, as I say, you know, she needed it, they needed it, they got a bit of it today, and we will see what the full fruits of that are or are not in the coming weeks and months.
What is your sense, though, actually being in the room? Because, you know, it felt like the audience, at least there was one for her, right? But it felt like they genuinely appreciated this speech. It seemed like genuine laughter and genuine applause. But what did it feel like afterwards? Did it feel like there had been a lift? Because it looked so depressing the last few days.
It's the end of the conference that you want to go away with something that you can be enthused and enthusiastic about. And yeah, look, I think it's clearly the case that that's what happened today. You know, it also, it seems to me, is what happened at the Labour conference last week as well, where, you know, I would say that neither Starmer nor Kemi Badenoch are sort of the greatest orators that you've ever heard. I think, you know, if you were drawing up a list of, you know, good political speakers, you know, people that not just can command the room, but, you know, I mean, they're not Margaret Thatcher, either of them, aren't they? Nor Tony Blair, nor Gordon Brown, nor, you know, David Cameron even. And, you know, in that respect, I don't think expectations were high. But, you know, the Tories have gone away today in a happier place than they were before they started, I think. And that's really about the best they can hope for.
Interesting, though, because although Reform and Farage weren't really mentioned, a couple of times maybe, it is interesting that Kemi had said before that she wasn't going to come up with policies, it was too early. So Reform may not have been in her mouth, but definitely on her mind, because she's come forward with some good policies. They've grabbed the headlines. They've done better than Labour in terms of front pages with some of the policies that she's mentioned. But she's fast-tracked those because of Reform.
I think, you know, what is it, 15 months since the election, and she did say that she would take some time to actually come up with some policy stuff, and it's generally the case. It's acknowledged, I think, certainly by most of the journalists that you talk to, that they've actually done some serious work. This isn't just a kind of headline exercise where, you know, they've kind of drawn it up in the back of a fag packet and made announcements, which some people, I think, have criticised Reform for doing. So I think there's a recognition of that. I think, you know, look, actually thought the stamp duty thing is really quite a positive policy for the Tories at the end of the day. It surprised people. It's the case that people in the shadow cabinet didn't really know it was coming. Most of the commentators that I've heard are saying that actually abolishing stamp duty, one, is an unpopular tax, and two, not a very good tax. So actually, this is a pretty good idea. I'm not sure how many people it affects at the end of the day. Everybody buying a house under 125,000, which doesn't sound like a lot, but is in some parts of the country, don't pay already. The 2% charges for houses double that, and that would mean, about £2,500 that people would pay. So the abolition of the tax is actually skewed quite heavily to a lot of people on higher incomes who will save,
or who are unfortunate enough to live in expensive areas like London.
Exactly.
I mean, I know people who haven't got a brass farthing to fold in half and rub both edges together, living in London, can't afford to buy a property. So
I'm not criticising that. I'm just saying, actually it's quite an unpopular tax. Therefore, I think she's kind of won a bit of a watch, right, by coming up with that. As I say, the Tories need this kind of ammunition, but again, we shouldn't underestimate the fact that they're in pretty much a fight for their lives. The election's not due, of course, until, well, Nigel Farage thinks it'll be 2027, but I think it's the 15th of August 2029. We're all going to have to wait for this. So in the meantime, this kind of action, as you say, having said that they would spend a long time developing policy, actually coming out with this now, again, they needed it. They needed that, not just that policy today, but the kind of blizzard of announcements that they've made this week. Now, it'll be interesting to see what way this falls. I mean, I don't know. I spoke to one Conservative earlier and said, do you not have to watch that somehow or other people will be able to portray you using that time-honoured phrase that you heard from Theresa May as the nasty party again with some of this stuff. But, they weren't having any of it at the end of the day. And again, this is where we get into much bigger philosophical questions in relation to, where are the Conservatives going? Are they now going, to the right? It looks a bit like that, aping reform, and how really in Britain, like anywhere else in Europe, and further afield, the centre isn't particularly holding and isn't particularly doing very well, because people are voting for really, different policies on the right, and we live in a different world now.
But I think, though, that at least through this speech and through some of the policy decisions that they've come up with, I think we have a better idea of who they are than we did, who they intend to be in the future, as opposed to who they were, and certainly, of course, there is that reform shadow hanging over them, and there were decisions made about British benefits for British citizens. That's potentially not something that they would have said at this stage if it weren't for reform. Weak borders as well, they may have said, but not in the same way. So I think she's set the stall out pretty well today. She was much more conservative in its policies, if you know what I mean.
I think you're absolutely right, but again, we're talking about something at a much more basic level here, because the Tories are in a fight to make themselves relevant. They're in that fight to get themselves even a hearing, and that's where it's important now for the party activists. At least they might have something to sell, right, to win back, to arrest that decline. So it's not just about the Kemi Badenoch's confidence and the confidence of the people who were at the Conservative Party. They've now got, right, something that they can go and chap doors with, right? Because look, they are in a bad place. They're third. They don't have the relevance that they had before. And the other thing, of course, is that, you know, they're really relying on the public kind of forgetting the fact that they were in power for more than a decade.
Well, yeah, that's embarrassing. Yeah.
You know, you can look at, you know, some of the stuff that they've announced, you know, leaving aside that stamp duty announcement, you can look at some of the stuff that they've announced over this week, and you can say, well, yeah, I like that, that's all very well, but frankly, why did you not do it when you were there? And it's not really that kind of, it's only, what, 14, 15 months since they were in power. You know, ECHR, well, you could have done that anyway. Welfare cuts, well, you could have done that too. You know, business rates and the abolition, which was another big announcement that Mel Stride made yesterday, yeah, that could have been done. So I think they're kind of hoping that the public somehow or other will forget about that, because again, we're back in the ball game where the public are looking at both Labour and they're looking at the Tories, and they're kind of saying, well, you guys are the old parties, we're kind of fed
and
up
neither
with
of you have
everything you've
worked.
got. Exactly, exactly.
I mean, the thing is, though, that even after the Labour Party conference, I still didn't, the messaging was poor. I still really didn't understand who Labour is, what they stand for. They can't even tell you what a worker is, you know. I mean, it's all very sneaky about the budget. You know, Kemi Badenoch said that she's going to be honest with us from now on, which in fact says we have been dishonest in the past, right? And none of us believe they're going to be honest anyway. Little boy who cried wolf way too many times. But I just got a better sense of who is going to be in opposition, either against reform or against Labour or against both, than I have of my own government.
Yeah, I thought Starmer made a very good speech last week for him, should I say?
Yeah.
Right? And he tried at least to begin the semblance of some kind of narrative of what he was about and what his government's about. I think in some ways, right, probably she made a better speech today. Because, as you said, you know, you got a better sense of where she wants the Conservatives to be, what direction of travel they've got with her as leader. You know, so, you know, if you're looking back at the past few weeks, you know, she's probably made the better speech. But again, you're back to that thing that it's all really a bit of a mess.
Yeah. Yeah, it is, and we're still in the same position with reform being as a serious threat to both of these parties than we were even before all of these conferences started. John, always a pleasure to see you. I'm glad you're safely back up north, the other side of the war. Thank you very much indeed. John Boothman, political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland. Quick break, back in a sec.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it's Petrie here, and just to remind you that we're going to be talking money news in a few minutes, and then we're heading to chat with Cody Darla about some of the interesting stories that never make it to the front page. So we're going to be doing that as well, and then Amy Fisher will be here to go through the papers for Thursday. But there's a great story here today. It's in quite a few of the papers today. I'm taking this one from the Mirror, and it talks about being an adult and which jobs we hate the most as being an adult. See if this resonates with you. Fixing appliances. I don't mind doing that. I don't mind doing that, although I've broken an appliance. I cleaned my oven. Actually, somebody might know the answer to this. I cleaned my oven at the weekend. I was very proud of myself. It took me hours, days. It's all really clean and lovely, and I switched it on today to cook a chicken, and it blew my fuse. Why? Because now I'm going to have to fix it. And not only that, I'm going to have to find the plug for it, which is probably behind a cupboard somewhere. So can somebody help me out with that? Anyway, I'll have to fix it, and I will fix it. But filing taxes, hate it. One of the worst jobs as an adult ever. And cooking from scratch, I love doing that. They're the top 3 tasks that adults feel most under-equipped for. I mean, I remember that as a very young woman, there was never enough plugs. Do you remember? You always had appliances that came without plugs, and so you'd always take a plug off a hairdryer to put on the curling tongs, or you'd take the plug off a I don't know, something else, the oven, let's say, to put on the fridge. But we all knew how to change a plug. My son wouldn't know what to do. I mean, I just bought some fuses the other day, and he picked it up and went, "What are they?" I said, "They're fuses for plugs." What? They have fuses? Yeah. So I did a really bad job with that. Budgeting, navigating without tech, understanding interest rates, and negotiating rent or job offers or bills make up the top 10. I get that. I do that. Meanwhile, 61% of young adults said they felt their schools did not teach them the skills they needed for adulthood. 24% said they didn't realise electricity bills had to be paid. Not my son. I was going, switch that light off, like Blackpool illuminations in my house. And so he knew that the electricity had to be paid for. And they thought that water was free until they became adults. Again, the 24-hour showers that a teenage boy has, they were curtailed. 59% of Gen Zs still rely on parents to pick up the odd bill, such as mobile phones and rent. My son is still on my mobile phone contract. Tell me any child, anybody in there still on their parents? No? Sam, are you still on your mum and dad's? That's that. You've got 2 kids. You're married, and your parents still pay your phone bill, and they pay his wife's phone bill. Your parents, can they pay mine? They can adopt me if they want. Anyway, so those are the jobs that adults hate. Let me know which jobs you hate as an adult the most. I think most of them are covered there. But do let me know. And let me know as well if you're still on your parents' phone bill. Give me a call, or leave a message. 87222. Put the word talk up front.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
I've just been told that I've probably blown the heating element. Is that difficult to replace? Let me know, Lee in Brum. Let me know if it's easy to replace, because I can do all that. I fixed my own dishwasher. So let me know if I have to just buy the heating element and replace it. I'd quite like to do that job if it's easy to do, so let me know. So talking of money and saving money, I've just had a big explanation as to why Sam, married man with 2 kids, is still on his father's phone bill. Yeah, and we're talking money now with Adam French, head of news at Money Facts. Adam, are you still on your parents' phone bill?
Evening, Petrie. No, that's a long time ago, unfortunately for me. Although my wife is actually paying my mother-in-law's phone bill at the moment, so it's kind of gone full circle in our household now. Yeah,
I'm paying it for now in the hope that when I'm old and doddery, my son will have to pick up all of my bills. So I'm quite happy to.
I think that's only fair. That's only fair. That's only fair. As a relatively new parent, I think it is right that things come back round again.
Otherwise, why have them, Adam? I
know, why go through this hassle? Why the lack of sleep if you don't get this back, right?
Exactly that. Let's look at another thing that we have to pay as adults, and that is house prices and mortgages. Mortgages are set to rise again.
Yeah, it looks that way at the moment. They have been going up over the last month or so as things go. So we saw the base rate cut in August, but we have seen since then mortgage rates start to drop a little bit throughout August, and in September they started to pick up again. And that's largely due to a few things, primarily a lot of uncertainty in the run up to the budget in the autumn, but also swap rates, which is kind of goes on in the background. It's essentially how banks trade interest rates and try and balance risk between each other. And when those rates start to go up, it basically has an uptick and means that mortgage rates can begin to tick up as well. So there's been a lot going on in the background of uncertainty. We've seen government debt, the cost of that increasing as well. And it's all added up to meaning that mortgage rates have started to just tick up a little bit again. And that appears to have had a knock-on impact on house prices. So Halifax came out with the house price index yesterday, and it showed that on month, house prices had dropped around 0.3%, or they've still grown just over 1% on a yearly basis. But ultimately, mortgages ain't getting any cheaper at the moment.
No.
And a house is only worth what people can afford to pay. And we ran the numbers at Money Facts around a month ago now, and you're looking at paying around 45% of the average gross income going on a mortgage at the moment for just an average house, which obviously is a lot more if you're in London or the southeast. So realistically speaking, it came as no great shock to see house price growth incredibly flat or even dropping a little bit at the moment.
This is what really confuses me as well, though, about the rising inflation, although obviously it's based on fuel prices and things that are out of our control. Because most people, their finances at the moment, if you're renting, you know, as my son and his girlfriend do, that's a huge portion. It's 55% of their income, of their joint income, is going on rent. They don't have the money to go out and splurge, right? The rest of it goes on bills and council tax and things like that. Or you own and you're scared about the mortgages keep going up and, you know, up and up and up. They're never going. We're not going to see them go back below 3% for if ever again. So why is inflation so stubborn? Because people are not out, you know, ravenously spending and going on holidays, and they can't afford it. It just seems to be stagflation more than anything else.
Yeah, we're stuck in this really unpleasant place at the moment as a country where inflation, and actually when you begin to compound inflation over, say, the last 5 years, for example, so say in 2020, what costs £100 in 2020 would now cost you around £128. So 28% increase when you compound inflation. I mean, admittedly, the last 5 years have been pretty exceptional, but that goes some way to explaining why people are so angry at the moment and frustrated and feel like their standard of living is slipping. I actually ran the numbers. Say you were earning £30,000 in 2020, you would now need to be earning £38,444 to just be breaking even in terms of that standard of living that you came to expect from that salary. That's how much things have changed in 5 years.
Wow.
And that's why people really feel like they're struggling. When you consider you've got mortgages, you've got the energy bills you've been talking to there, the water bill, which I must confess, when I moved out of my parents' home, I didn't realise you had to pay for a water bill either. That was 17 years ago now, so I have learned that lesson several times over. But, you know, those kind of things begin to add up massively, and you can see why people are feeling the pinch so badly still. And even when we hear inflation is 3.8% at the moment, may hit 4% in September, those numbers sound quite small, but when you start to look at the effect it's had over a number of years, and whether your salary has kept up, whether your household income has kept up, it begins to go a long way to explaining why people feel so frustrated at the moment and feel like their actual quality of life has been slipping.
I mean, it absolutely has. It really, really has. I mean, just doing a weekly shop, you know that, right? It is evident. You can see it and everything. I just had one of those months where the car insurance, home insurance, TV licence, you name it, RAC, you know, road. Yeah. It's all because I'm moved, and then it's all come in 1 month. And it's just like, it's catastrophic. You know, you look at it and you go, oh my God, that is so much more expensive.
Absolutely. I mean, this is where it is always worth putting a little bit of time away to shop around and try and save a few quid where you can, because you can actually begin to offset some of these increases. Ultimately, we live in a world where loyalty doesn't pay, unfortunately, and it is all about having to switch, having to be proactive and engaged as a consumer of all of these products. And going back to what you were talking about before, jobs you hate. I'm a financial journalist by trade, right? And I hate shopping around for energy bills. I hate having to shop around and change insurance.
Oh, I can't bear it.
It's such a pain in the backside.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I try and look at it as, if you do that, so you shop around for a better car insurance, you may be able to save £200-300, right, over the course of a year. And maybe that's 30 minutes work. It's not a bad salary.
No, it's not.
And that's the trick I have to play in my mind to make you sit down and do it.
Yeah, I mean, I tried to do that. I did shop around, but by the time you sort of compare policy to policy and cost to cost and excess to excess, and does it cover windscreens being replaced or does it not cover, it's pretty much, you know, the same, or you have to add things on. So I've discovered that as well, that a lot of these things, although you do shop around, if you really dig down into the detail, which, you know, windscreens are a thing with me, I'm very unlucky with them. So if it isn't a policy that will fix that for free, I'm not going anywhere near it. And if there's a £200 excess or a £300 excess, it's not worth it. So yeah, I mean, shopping around is good, but sometimes it's minuscule amounts. My home insurance was a £2.13 difference or something, so I just stuck
sod it, I'll just renew.
I'll just renew.
Fair enough.
Yeah, but as you were saying, loyalty doesn't pay, and this terrifies me because I've been with the same bank since I got a bank. It's about 400 years ago when I first got a bank account. I've never switched a bank account, and that is something that I'm nervous about. Not that the bank knows who I am. It's not like the old days where you could phone up the bank manager. My bank manager was called Peter Bullivant. I still remember his name in the old days. So it wouldn't make any difference to me, but I'm very nervous about doing that.
And understandably so, and a lot of people are. Well, when we talked about rates before, higher rates, obviously bad news for borrowers, but good news for savers. So it's actually been really, really fruitful at the moment to have money in a good savings account. And if you look at what the big banks are paying on a easy access saver, you might be lucky to get between 1% and 2% interest. There are fixed bonds, you lock your money away for a year at the moment, you're getting closer to 4.5%. There are some easy access accounts paying close to 5% on certain amounts of deposit as well. So the amount of money you stand to make by switching accounts is pretty good, but switching does come with some concern for some people. So there are two types of things. If you switch in current account, there is the current account switching service, and that basically means all of your direct debits and whatnot follow you to your new account. Everything should be set up. There is a system that is set up to do that properly for you. I've done it 2 or 3 times in the past. Often banks will give you switching offers as well, so you can make a couple of £100. Like, it's actually really straightforward. I've tried to walk the walk on that one and actually do it, and I've ended up doing it 3 or 4 times. It is very worthwhile, and actually I've learned that some banks have better apps than others, for example, and whatnot. Like, it has been really helpful for me professionally, but also I've made a few £100 doing it and figured out what banks I actually like banking with. So that's been really helpful. Now, what's really surprising is a lot of people don't switch savings accounts. Now, we are always told to save money for a rainy day, put it away, save for the future. If you're not putting it in an account that's paying decent interest, then frankly, you might be wasting your time. Inflation is running at 3.8%. If you're not earning better than that on your savings account at the moment, in real terms, your money is losing value. So if you have cash savings, you want to make sure you're getting above that level, or at least as close to it as possible. And that means often switching savings accounts or opening another one. What was really shocking in a survey around with savers is 1 in 4 told us they had absolutely never switch savings accounts at all. Another 1 in 4 actually told us that maybe they only did it once before in their life, right? So again, it's about being proactive and wanting to make the most out of your money as possible. There are some really good savings deals out there. If you've got 10 grand saved away, which takes a little while to pocket but not overly long, then you can stand to make £100, £200 difference by the end of the year just by taking that simple step of moving savings account, which is pretty straightforward.
And you're taxed on those savings, right?
You can be. So there's the personal savings allowance, depending on where you sit within the tax bands. If you're a higher rate taxpayer, you can earn up to £500 in interest over a tax year, and then you start to have to pay tax. It basically counts as income, counts towards your income tax. What you can do to avoid that is get an ISA. So cash ISAs up to £20,000 a year into a cash ISA. The tax man can't touch it. You can put that in cash. You can invest it as well. One of the best ways to make sure you're getting your money working harder for you without having to pay any extra tax on top of it. I would recommend everyone little and often into an ISA. You'll be surprised how quick you can build it up, and you're very grateful not to be paying tax on whatever you earn.
Well, for now. For now, because there are a lot of budget rumours. There's a lot of, I've seen stories saying, pensioners are going to get a £300 tax bill. There's all sorts of things, reducing the level at which companies pay VAT, so potentially setting that at around 30 grand a year. And probably people say, well, that's okay, that doesn't affect me because I don't have a business. But it does affect you because it means those businesses now are going to have to charge you 20% more for their services to fulfil the potential budget requirements that could come. And of course we've heard rumours about going after savings as well, saying, well, it's not fair that some people have got savings, some people haven't, so we're going to tax people who've got savings. So a lot of people are very worried about it at the moment, but you think we shouldn't be jumping too soon on these?
Absolutely not. There were rumours at the start of the year about cash ISA limit potentially being cut. They went away again, and as you've just listed, so many rumours. And I remember a time when, I just sound really old now, but I remember when the budgets happened, there were no rumours beforehand. It was kind of a bit of a shock to everyone.
No, they brief them now.
We had to deal with it.
They brief out.
It's all briefed in. The kites are flying. You want to see how the market responds. Really unhelpful for us as consumers, ultimately, because people take knee-jerk reactions in response to rumours. So there have been problems with people looking to take pension lump sums early because they're worried that limit will be reduced. There have been problems with people piling money into ISAs, worrying that limit will be reduced, and making financial decisions that they wouldn't have done otherwise that may not actually be the best thing for them. People making those knee-jerk reactions need to really think things through carefully, because you can make decisions, particularly when it comes to things like your pension, that are very hard to undo. Now, no one has a crystal ball. There are so many rumours flying around. They're testing the water with so many different things. You may make a decision you come to regret. So if you are really concerned, and especially when it comes to something like retirement pensions, you're better off speaking to a professional advisor than you are making a knee-jerk reaction in response to some rumours that could very well not happen. Like, I've covered the budget for 10, 15 years now, and there are always rumours. No, I really get to live the dream.
You really do.
I started as well. Now, there are always rumours that don't happen. There are always rumours that don't happen.
Yeah.
And if someone has made that snap decision to try and do something to offset the risk around something unnecessarily, they could be in a much worse position. So I think seen so many financial pundits as well saying exactly the same thing, as do not make a knee-jerk reaction in response to rumours, because they could really ruin your finances, ruin your retirement planning ultimately, because of a rumour that some civil servant may have said to a journalist offhand.
Well, listen, Adam, you need not worry about your retirement because you will never get to retire. So
I know.
I wouldn't worry about it.
Just what my parents tell me as well, which is great.
You'll be fine. There's no need worrying about anybody under the age of 40. Yeah. You're never going to.
My dad says it's great. I sit for a living, as my dad says. He was a builder, so he's like, physically I can keep going until I'm 80, apparently, because I sit for a living.
Yeah,
so
exactly. You don't do any real work, Adam. So
exactly.
That's what I'm always told as well. Yeah. It's good to talk to you. Thank you so much, Adam French, Head of News at Money Facts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it's Petrie, and Lee's come back to me on my broken oven and said it's easy enough to change the heating element if you're confident. I have the confidence, I have all the tools. I've bought all the tools, I've got all the gear, no idea. But as you said, YouTube is your friend. So I'll give it a go, Lee in Brum. I'm going to change the heating element on my oven. There you go. I wish I hadn't cleaned it in the first place and it would still be working, but thank you very much indeed for that. And some of you have actually texted through and told me about the things you hate as an adult. Stephen said, I hate going food shopping and getting up in the morning. I pay my own phone bills though. Martin said, my mum would slap me if I asked her to pay for anything. And Pauline said, I love cooking from scratch. It's only when I do it that I realise how easy it is and so cost saving, but I work stupidly long self-employed hours, so it's easier to ping and ding. Hate? Oh my goodness, dealing with stupid people. Yeah, that's my biggest hate in the world. Thankfully, I don't have to deal with anybody stupid for at least the next, well, I was going to say 10 minutes, but it's an hour and 10 minutes because that would be rude to Amy, who's coming up at midnight. But Cody Darler joins me now, comedy writer and host of the Truth in My Opinion podcast. Cody, do you still pay your own phone bill, or are you on your mum's plan?
No, I'm not on my mum's plan. I pay my own phone bill.
Do you?
I'm almost 30 years old. Of course I do.
Well, my son's almost 30 years old and he's on my phone plan. Sam is older than that and he's on his dad's phone plan.
Oh, maybe I'm very independent.
You are. You clearly are. Right, let's have a look at some of the stories that you got for us, the ones that just didn't make the front pages but are so interesting. Wind has now overtaken coal as a source of fuel.
Yes, well, or renewables in general, actually. So a mixture of wind and solar power has now overtaken coal for the first time. And last year, all extra energy demands were met by renewables. And actually, renewables kind of ate into some coal and oil and gas. And I think this is like... This was run on the news yesterday, but it was kind of at the end of the news. Yeah. BBC News at 10, and I think it's such an important story because
it's a tipping point, isn't it?
Yes, that's exactly what they're calling it. It's a tipping point, and again, it focuses on that detail around our extra energy needs. They now feel can be met by renewables, but there's also a kind of real human element to this story, which is solar power is becoming so much more cheap. So it's the cost of a solar panel has been reduced by about 99% since 1975, and that has a huge human effect across sort of different continents like Africa and Asia in particular, where people kind of their electricity grid is kind of, it doesn't run particularly predictably. But people can kind of buy a few solar panels and they have independent energy. And actually, there was a detail I read about a few weeks ago about in Pakistan, it's now expected that a bride's dowry would come with a few solar panels.
Wow!
It becomes so important to the Pakistani farmer's way of life.
I mean, this to me sounds very similar as the moment that the wind-up radio was invented, because that changed everything for the communities that you're talking about, where they didn't need to rely on battery power, that they could, and they had access to the globe, to the world through this radio that they could just power by winding it up. I've got a wind up a radio at home, but I think that this is that kind of moment for me. It gives you goosebumps, because if people, like you said, unreliable energy, expensive energy, if you can produce your own energy for your, in a remote village, then that's a game changer, isn't it, around the world?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And I think this is a wonderful story in the sense that we're moving towards a slightly greener way of generating our energy, but also I think it's just it shows, or rather it undermines that kind of pernicious view that I think a lot of people have, which is that it's kind of only the West that are decarbonising. They're saying that China is now the largest producer of renewable energy. And that actually, like I say, a lot of these nations that people think are just pumping out emissions are turning to renewables. And so I think it's a story that should only galvanise our own attempts in the UK and the West to continue to decarbonise and to continue to invest in renewables. But there was an interesting part in the article that said, basically because of Trump, the US is now is becoming the main polluter. Trump's trying to sell oil and gas to the rest of the world. He's kind of underinvesting in their energy.
Well, he hates windmills.
He hates windmills. We know he hates windmills.
Yeah.
But also he's actively undermining. There's loads of the state of California and the state of Texas are huge producers of solar power, but Trump has actively, in his big beautiful bill, cut funding for energy networks. So
California, I mean, they run, like you said, a huge amount of their power on renewables. I mean, exactly. It's a shame that some people don't buy into this. I mean, I suppose we've got to take into account the cost to the environment of producing these solar panels as well. It's not all there will be a payoff, but
Yes.
certainly in terms of raising people's living standards and helping people to achieve a more decent life, these solar panels being so cheap now is an extraordinary step forward.
Definitely. I would also say on the cost side of it, because the early solar panels used a lot more materials. What they're doing actually is that they can recycle them. So actually, one old solar panel can now make roughly 3 modern ones.
Wow.
So there's actually an incredibly recyclable and renewable form of energy in a physical sense as well.
That's incredible. That is really good news. And some more good news, Cody. I've just got to break through because we've got some breaking news here, saying mediators have said that an agreement has now been reached on all terms of the first phase of the Gaza ceasefire. So mediators are saying that an agreement has been reached on all terms of the first phase of the Gaza ceasefire, and I'll bring you more on that at the top of the hour. I'm going to skip forward here, Cody, if I can, to the toilet roll story. I'm incensed by this.
Yeah, I feel like this is it's had the wind blown out of its sails by the fantastic news on Gaza.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is a story coming out of China. An insider has shared some video footage of basically a toilet roll dispenser that runs ads. So in order to get your toilet paper, you have to either watch an ad or pay, I think, the equivalent of 5p, which raises the question, the biggest question, which is that what happens if your phone dies? Which is you just got to sit there.
You just got to sit there and borrow somebody's phone, I guess.
Or borrow someone's phone. Yeah.
Yeah, you're paying. You have to pay to wipe.
Yes, or watch an ad.
Yeah.
Or watch an ad.
Yeah.
But there's
Which would you do?
Oh, that's a tough one. I think I'd watch an ad.
I think I would as well. I'm quite cheap.
Yeah. I'm cheap as well. I would definitely watch an ad.
I would definitely watch an ad.
They're getting quite good now, actually, aren't they, ads?
How much paper do you get? I mean, if it's a particularly difficult situation, you might have to watch a few.
Yes, well, exactly. If it's tricky, apparently in this article, if you're a bit ill, if I put it that way, you don't have to watch it. But there was another part of China.
Oh my
and they're going
goodness!
to great lengths to stop it.
Great lengths. Very good line. Cody Darla, thank you so much. Absolutely brilliant. I think I might start introducing that in my house, charging for toilet paper. That'd be great. Comedy writer and host of the Truth, in my opinion, podcast. Right, stay where you are. There'll be more on that deal that has been struck, and Amy Fisher will be here.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a very good morning to you. It is Petrie here with you, and more on that breaking news. Donald Trump, of course, has put this out on Truth Social. This is how the White House does things. So I'm just grabbing a piece of paper. Donald Trump has said, "I'm very proud to announce that Israel and Hamas have both signed off on the first phase of our peace plan. This means that all of the hostages will be released very soon, and Israel will withdraw their troops to an agreed upon line as the first steps towards a strong, durable and everlasting peace. All parties will be treated fairly. This is a great day for the Arab and Muslim world, Israel, all surrounding nations, and the United States of America. And we thank the mediators from Qatar, Egypt and Turkey who worked with us to make this historic and unprecedented event happen. Blessed are the peacemakers." So that is what he has said. He said that he's announced Israel and Hamas have both signed off on the first phase. Trump is considering travelling to the Middle East himself in the coming days. He said possibly on Sunday. Mediators from the US, Egypt and Qatar in Sharm el-Sheikh have been attempting to broker an agreement for a ceasefire in Gaza and a release of those Israeli hostages. The negotiations come 2 years and 2 days after Israel launched a military campaign in Gaza in response to the 7th of October 2023 attack in which Hamas-led gunmen killed around 1,200 people and took 251 others as hostages. At least 67,183 people have been killed by Israeli military operations in Gaza since then, according to the Hamas-run health ministry. But this sounds like exceptional news. With me in the studio is Amy Fisher, former Director of Comms for the Conservative Party. This is welcome, isn't it? If it can be done, because I thought Hamas was saying they wanted to swap hostages for the Hamas terrorists that were arrested on October 7th.
So look, on the one hand, absolutely anything that would be progress towards more people not dying in this part of the world, as have been in these horrific circumstances for the last 2 years, is to be unequivocally welcomed. I mean, just to be really clear about that. And delighted as I was when you sort of first read out the news about 3-4 minutes ago, when I was just sitting outside the studio, yeah, instinctively my first reaction was, oh, brilliant, thank goodness if there's going to be anything to kind of break the stalemate and stop people and the suffering and dying. And then this tiny niggle came into my mind, which is, you know, Trump does have a bit of a track record, as in it's more than a habit, it's an actual track record of sort of not just kind of getting ahead above himself, but sort of announcing things, and they aren't quite as what this initial, you know, news of 6 or 7 minutes ago might be. So yes, whilst initial reaction, delighted, let's be pleased for us what we can understand it to be at the moment. I'm afraid I personally just must reserve a little bit of something back as we wait to see exactly what has been agreed,
where this line is,
and by whom, and exactly what the various trade-offs between Hamas and Israel have been. Because I say, I don't think I'm being overly cynical when I say there's just a bit of me that, as I say, initially delighted, it does need to see a bit more of the detail before I really start getting too pleased about it.
Yeah, no, I agree, because we know certainly up to even today that there was still bombing, there was still deaths, there are still people starving and without healthcare. And what is interesting to me is what isn't being said. That's what I always look for. I'm sure as a comms director you
Mm.
also look for what isn't said, and that is what the steps are going forward. Is it a
detail.
two-state solution? Will the West Bank be cleared of you know, of the Israelis that have been occupying those parts? You know, all of this has got to be settled.
And Israel, you know, over the last few days has been saying some very, well, they've been coming increasingly hardline over the last sort of few weeks or month. You know, I would just want to understand with more detail how Israel, which has been becoming increasingly, as I say, hardline over the last 3, 4, 6 weeks, exactly where they've gotten to and exactly what the trade-off has been and exactly how. I think it's about 30 hostages that Hamas are still thought to have from the original attack on the Novo Music Festival 2 years ago. Look, I just want to know a bit more about some of the actual detail and the actual process of how either of these two sides are going to be slightly stepping away from each other whilst
there has to have been compromise.
Well, there has to have been some kind of compromise, and however now they're going to kind of eyeball each other with hostility and still suspicion, because none of what's happened over the last 2 years is just going to suddenly have gone away by some sort of deal that Trump, in his pursuit of the Nobel Prize, thinks that he might have negotiated. So again, I can only say delighted. For what progress there might be in this, but my level of delight now is very contingent on actual practicality and understanding of the detail.
Yeah, because I find it difficult to believe that Hamas hasn't come away with something in this, because the requirement for there to be no Hamas in government and to hand back those hostages, that was their only bargaining chip. That was all they had left. Their single bargaining chip. So what have they been given in return? Because there can be no world where Hamas is in government.
No.
There absolutely cannot. It's a proscribed terrorist organisation, and that is not something that Israel would in any way accept.
Well, actually, I'm not even sure that kind of Qatar or Egypt or any of these other places
would accept it either.
Were being thanked in the statement you just read out would be part of it. Anyway, but again, this goes back to you know, there's that old kind of saying of, you know, there's one side's truth, there's the other side's truth, and then there's sort of the bit in the middle that probably is the actual truth. And as ever, you know, with kind of Donald Trump, that's, the White House has put out this statement, but I really think we need to see what lies beneath it, because I suspect it might not quite be as has been reported on Truth Social there. I mean, not least, you know, if they're thanking Qatar, I mean, 3 weeks ago they were bombing Qatar. Bombing Qatar. There's so many threads in this that, as I say, with reserved excitement, that perhaps there can be some pathway to the end to human suffering on all sides in Gaza. I will just need a bit more reassurance upon the detail, and that perhaps at this moment, at, you know, sort of 10 past 12, we aren't just kind of getting the Trump side of it, when there are two other parties in this who had fairly intractable positions. And so exactly what has happened to allow them to hopefully disengage somewhat, and to what degree?
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I mean, it would be amazing. But when you talk about a lasting peace, a strong, durable, and everlasting peace, it is hard to imagine, because we have never known that.
No, indeed. But also, to be rather crude about it, you know, there's just a bunch of people who might need to move out of tracts of land, right? So even any of the sort of principled sort of high-level politics of either side of it, there's just a physical reality of people sort of stuck in places without...
That don't really exist anymore.
Don't even really exist anymore. And so there is just, as I say, a sheer practical reality of, well, you know, whatever might have been agreed at some very high top level, you know, with very senior politicians and all the rest of it. I mean, well, how is that going to literally affect people who are in desperate sanitary healthcare, no food, bombed out conditions on a bit of land they're not even sure if they're going to be, you know, hounded out of?
Yeah, and also, of course, there was talk, wasn't there, about Donald Trump and Tony Blair being the governors of Gaza.
The 30-point plan, right?
Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of this that is there's a long way to go.
Yeah.
And just to herald an everlasting peace is potentially just jumping the gun, maybe. But like you said, we have hope.
Yeah, we'll take it for what it is at this moment.
Yeah.
More hopeful than things have been in the last 2 years.
Yeah, definitely.
But now just need to see what the next few hours, you know, and days will tell us about the detail.
Yeah. Indeed, and the bombing has just got to stop, and the shooting has just got to stop, and those people have got to be fed, and that's the end of it, really. That's what we want to start seeing happening. I want to see some action, not just some words on Truth Social. Let's take a quick break, Amy, and then we'll come back and start going through the papers for Thursday.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and it is Petrie with you. We will bring you more, if there is any more, on the peace deal that apparently is the beginning stages of being struck. Then we will bring that to you until 1 o'clock. But with me in the studio is Amy Fisher, former Director of Comms for the Conservative Party. We will get to the Tories because it's on almost all the front pages.
All the front
they
pages.
Did well, right?
Yeah, they did pull that sort of surprise announcement at the back. No, they didn't.
But first of all, let's start with the Sun newspaper. Again, Maddie on the front page. There is a real trend at the moment to be putting Maddie on the front page. Kate's Payne at Stalker's trial accused. This is this woman who said that she was Madeleine as a grown-up.
Yeah.
And I think that she's had all the sort of tests and everything, and it's been proven that she absolutely isn't. But a while ago, she kept trying to phone.
Which is 60. Well, she was stalking. So this is what this woman has been in on trial for, is stalking and harassment. Basically, it was being reported as in, you know, up to 60 calls a day to Kate McCann saying, "I'm your daughter. Oh, mummy, please help me. Why won't you talk to me?" I mean, it's just
horrendous.
You cannot conceive of it. So, obviously, Madame McCann is what sort of getting on for 20 years ago. That this little girl, in circumstances which the world is still, you know, obsessed by in a way of how can this little girl just have disappeared I actually can't remember now how many investigations and re-investigations. I think it was sort of about 10 was Theresa May, who put a particular Madeleine McCann fund behind the actual Met Police going over to Praia de Luz, Portugal, to kind of reopen it and do it from a British end of it. And obviously there was the German suspect who I think was released from an unrelated prison sentence for an unrelated crime just even a week ago. So, you know, of all the kind of recognisable faces of, you know, children, I think we all kind of, as soon as we don't only see the headline, we kind of see that little girl's face, we go, oh my goodness, that's Madeleine McCann, and yeah, it was 20 years ago, she just disappeared. And then the idea that as a parent that could happen, and then years later, you know, this sort of 24-year-old woman, as I say, the one who's been in court, is writing you letters saying, "Mummy, why won't you speak to me?" and phoning you every day, and appears to be enabled by another kind of older woman in her 50s, and I haven't quite been able to understand the connection there. I've kind of read, you know, quite a lot of the copy that was out before, obviously came into the studio, but the whole thing is just grot, and you wonder what goes through people's mind that they could even conceive of doing this to a family that lost their little girl.
Apparently she's done it to other people as well and claimed to be their daughter. I mean,
clearly there's some kind of...
There's obviously some mental health issues. But to have somebody phone you up and saying, "It's me, Mummy,
why won't you can't..." I mean, when I say I can't conceive it, I mean in the literal sense of, you know, I don't know what it is to have had my child sort of kidnapped or whatever, and then to have somebody else, I'm trying to think of a stronger word than playing on that grief.
Yeah.
Is it like a weird Munchausen by...
Yeah,
there's clearly somebody getting a pleasure, or there's a motivation behind doing this that is sort of is unfathomable to kind of rational...
Yeah. It's a particularly evil thing to do. The headline there says, "I want Maddie back, calling me mum." So even worse when somebody who isn't Maddie calling her mummy is just awful. So that's on the front page of The Sun, along with a photograph of Posh Spice, Victoria Beckham. Not a surprising headline. It would actually win the "I'm not surprised" headline of the decade. My eating disorder struggle. So she has a Posh Spice, Victoria Beckham. She has a Netflix series out. I think it's starting tonight, Thursday night. I even think, and yes, one of the things in it she says is, you know, I had this terribly poor image of myself. I wasn't wildly confident, and yes, that meant I sort of felt that I would control my weight. But which is very brave of her to admit, and I hope there might be some other things in the admittance of that where, you know, she may be able to, I don't mean her personally, it's not contingent upon her, but if she's going to kind of air the difficulties of a subject like eating disorders, one hopes the Netflix documentary will deal with it in a way that may be able to signpost people onto other pathways to help. But in terms of the fact, I mean, she's always been with the tiniest thing. The headline in and of itself was not a surprise, and apparently it's a sort of 3-part series all about sort of you know, how she felt a bit lost when the Spice Girls came to an end, and how she then set up her fashion line, and then how sort of embarrassed she was when David Beckham had to pile her out. And yeah, it's and the whole Rebecca Lewis thing.
This in any of the copy that I've read about this, it's been about those things. It's been about how she dealt with the Spice Girls, the eating disorder, you know, how she dealt with her business when it wasn't initially successful but now is. I've not seen a single mention of the alleged affair issue. Because if you remember, though, there was that Posh and Beck's documentary that came out about a year ago on Netflix. Did you see that?
No.
So in that, it was literally called Posh and Beck's.
Oh, so it was just about him, apparently.
It was very... She was in it, but it was very about him. And in that, I seem to think it was about 3 hours. As in, it was a relatively solid sort of bit of production. But even in that, there was like an oblique mention to, I became very friendly with one of my staff in Madrid.
Oh.
and then that,
I mean, that was just the biggest story
it
ever.
was absolutely enormous. No, but certainly for this one, no. But then you know, look. Then again, if she's wanting to allow more access into her life than ever before, why should one of the defining things be about her husband's affair?
That's true, but except that.
It was
that
huge,
would
and
play
they are-
into your mental health,
Yeah,
wouldn't it?
no, of course.
In a way.
And also, if you're going to be such a public couple, because they were always Posh and Beck, they did come as like a Barbie and Ken.
Yeah.
You know, they were the twosome, and that was their marketability and profitability. Then, yeah, but I don't. As I say, from everything I've read, I don't think that's.
Look, they seem to have more than just sustain their marriage. They seem to be very. I hope it's true. I hope it is true that they're happy, because they certainly look it. And it is a good thing that somebody as slender as Victoria is saying, look, I had an eating disorder, because then, you know, there'll be a lot of young people who do aspire to be like her. But I am a bit bored with hearing what she eats in a day, and she eats steamed fish and kale or something for every meal. It's like, well, you know, I don't trust people who don't eat properly.
Reach for a Toblerone once in a while. Like once in a while.
Have a filthy burger.
Yeah, once in a while. Not going every day, heart disease and all that, but once in a while.
Yeah. Treat yourself. Be human. So that's the Sun. The Times for today, again showing a picture of Posh and Bex there on the front page. They've got front row seats at the Curzon Mayfair for the premiere of a documentary about her life as a designer. The other story, Badenoch builds case to abolish stamp duty. Now, I watched this, but I'm no political fan of any persuasion, right? And I'm far too cynical. But do you know what? That was a well-written speech.
It was well-written.
It was funny.
She seemed very relaxed. It was funny.
It was
She had a
funny.
few of these jokes about, you know, Keir Starmer was asked earlier this year about what was his, you know, proudest moment as PM, and he replied saying, "Oh, when I walked into Downing Street for the first time." I have to say that's the only thing I agree with him about. Like she did, she like there were these, and there was another sort of bit where she did the riff on kind of Churchill, you know, never as a sacrifice be made by so many to so
that was
few.
Funny.
That was very funny. It was. You know, but kind of lines like that could actually have been totally leaden, as in it was a well-written speech, but she also delivered it in a relaxed manner with a certain degree of levity, and then produced this absolute rabbit out the hat, which hadn't been trailed at all, about the abolition of, you know, stamp duty for primary residences, and boom. I mean, look, I think. I obviously am a Conservative, and yes, therefore I am partisan, but I did objectively think, for the reasons I've described, that it was a good speech. However, talking, you know, to various sort of contacts and friends and association members, I mean, I kind of have to say, look, hang on, guys, like, we're not about to get back into government next week. Like, it was a good speech, but... But then maybe it has given such a shot in the arm. It really has from everyone I've spoken to.
Will it save her job though? Because you think it will. I think it will as well. I think it's made. I think that was a pivotal moment for her, and she needed to have it, because they were swarming, right? They were all circling her, and generally there's some very clever camera work on the network that I was watching. He did not look happy.
No.
He looked right hacked off, actually, I have to say.
Well, I mean, he's just looked sort of somewhat miserable since he's been on the Ozempic diet and sort of trying to be the Bonnie Prince Scotland across the water for about the last 9 months, right?
Yeah.
And he did think his time was coming maybe a couple of months ago, but not only with this...
I think he thought his time was coming when he gave his speech at conference. I think he was speaking there as a potential leader. So it was only been a day.
No, this is what I mean. I think he first really thought, oh no, I'm going to get it like a couple of months ago.
Right. Oh, right.
And so yes, and I agree with your timing of like, then this was going to be the kind of moment to go in for this sort of the shark attack. But then obviously he had this kind of misspeak, or the recording, or whatever he's calling it, where he said, I haven't seen any white faces. You know, there's kind of leaked recording. Which I don't understand. I think I understand what he was trying to say, and it wasn't.
Yeah, I don't think it's as bad as people. I really genuinely don't.
But this is what I mean. Is I don't think he was actually making a racist point.
No.
I think how he how he himself then explained it when he was given the opportunity to do so was bafflingly bad. I think he could have actually made a really proper point about integration and what he was getting at then. And frankly, if I were him, you know, of course the point is not about the colour of the skin. Actually, there are more legitimate things to be said about, for example, having a common language, which is why now in this country we're asking people to reach a certain level of being able to speak English, they can have a job and be not isolated inside. My point is, I don't think it was as bad as The Guardian, who printed the clips, wanted it to be. However, I don't think he did a good enough job of explaining what he was actually trying to get at. But no, that's sidetrack. I mean, so yes, I think Kemi was on slightly dodgy ground before the start of conference. I thought from the off, when she did the traditional kind of Sunday morning interview kind of with Laura Koonsberg on the BBC, I thought she got off on a good foot there. She didn't get rattled. She was quite measured, because she can sometimes be quite shouty. So I thought she started off well. She weathered this kind of storm about what was your Justice Secretary said, or the Conservative Party inherently racist. Didn't go too much on Farage, because I think that was Keir Starmer's mistake.
Huge mistake. I was saying that earlier.
So much time.
It was embarrassing.
It was. It got to the point of, like, you do know these people are like, not near government yet. They've got like 10 councils. Like, can we get? So I think the fact that Kemi Badenoch very clearly was talking about the government's failure. This is how the government are letting people down, and then producing this kind of ta-da, none of you saw this coming with the stamp duty. I thought she played it entirely. That was a 9 out of 10.
Yeah, I was saying, I was chatting to John Boosman earlier, the political reporter at the Sunday Times, in Scotland, and I said to him that it was, I thought it was really interesting how she took control of that speech, and how she was very calm, she was very funny, it was extremely well written, and that I know more about who the Tories say they are and where they're taking the Tory party than I still know about my own government. Because I still think that the failure to communicate properly happened at conference, even with Keir Starmer's relative reasonable speech, but I just can't bear his voice. But I think that Kemi has laid out a pathway for the Tories now, which is a bit more cohesive, and at least they've got something to say on the doorstep.
Yes, and it is still entirely legitimate that 4 years out, not everything is completely detailed. However, with the stamp duty and various other comments that are made about abolishing the IHT on farms, abolishing VAT on private school fees, there are properly some bones of a something there, plus that Kemi was able to present herself as, this is to your point about the ownership of it, she clearly was comfortable in how she was presenting herself. She had decided what the speech was that she wanted to give, and she gave it in a way that she wanted to give it, which I know sounds almost moronic in its simplicity, but trust me, of all I've seen and all the speeches I've seen at Conservative Party conference by very senior members of the government, that is more difficult to do than I've just said it is. So no, I think she did very well, but as I say, I have been saying to some friends and contacts, but look guys, it was just one speech. I'm as pleased as you that it went as well as it did, and hopefully there'll be some good front pages, which there are here, which we're looking at. But like, come on, there are, we are still rather in the foothills. So good. Let's take it as now a building block, but
at least if it does mean that Kemi's safe, then there's not going to be that distraction of another leadership contest. I can't bear it.
No, but again, even
stop it.
I've been in this politics malarkey for kind of over 20 years, Moses, as working for Conservative Party, and even I was suddenly thinking, oh, hang on, this is actually her first proper speech as leader.
Yeah.
It was this time a year ago that the party was still faffing around after you know, losing the general election and trying to pick a leader. I mean, I suddenly was like, gosh, that's been a very long year.
It has been a very
long year, hasn't it?
Very long year. We're going to take a break in just a moment, but before that, there's some more lines that have come in on Gaza. They seem very positive, actually. Qatar's foreign minister has also confirmed that an agreement has been reached over the first phase of the Gaza peace plan between Israel and Hamas. Benjamin Netanyahu said, tomorrow I will convene the government to approve the agreement and bring all our dear hostages home. And Hamas said that the deal includes an Israeli withdrawal from the enclave and, this is the point that we were talking about, a hostage prisoner exchange, and called on Trump and guarantor states to ensure that Israel fully implements the ceasefire. And CNN believes that all hostages will be released this weekend. So there is to be a hostage or a prisoner exchange. So Hamas will get their prisoners back. So any more information on that, we will bring that to you as soon as it hits the wires. Quick break, back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, you're with Talk and you're with Petrie and Amy Fisher, former Director of Comms at the Tory Party. The Independent, again, we were saying, Amy, that they've done extremely well on their front pages. I mean, Labour must be weeping because they did not, even after the Keir Starmer speech.
Because these front page headlines are consistent and they're very straight. Like, this is the Independent, this is not a Conservative supporting paper, and yet just very plainly, Badenoch backs the House on promise to end stamp duty. They're not skewing it anyway, they're not trying to put an editorial spin on it. Yep. So anybody, and as I say, the Independent is not known for its support of the Conservatives, and so it's the sheer consistency in these front pages, of which there are 4 or 5 that are very plainly just repeating exactly what the Conservative Party would want them to do, which is literally, hey, anybody who picks up a paper today on Thursday is going to go, oh right, I'm interested in that idea to end stamp duty, because that does cost me, or if anybody is thinking about buying a house or wanting to move, it is suddenly a big whack on cost that you really have to factor into things. So yeah, the fact that kind of even the left-leaning, non-supporting Conservative papers are just going, no, boom, this is what they've said. As I say, anybody reading their papers today will be probably have their interest quite peaked.
I can imagine them sitting at breakfast tomorrow at a meeting going, what did the papers do, being really happy with
extraordinarily
with just that as you said,
That,
no
just-
editorialising,
No.
no question about it, no how can they afford it, have they costed it, just the statement.
In fact, the Independent is quite ironic because that's obviously the main headline, but then the sort of secondary headline underneath it is Tories pledge $9 billion to scrap bad tax on main homes in bid to help struggling first-time buyers and boost poll ratings after lacklustre party conference overshadowed by rise of reform. I'd be delighted with this.
Yeah.
Not only is my main proposal about scrapping stamp duty getting out there, we're talking about always, because also the sort of one area that the Conservatives are still clearly polling much stronger on reform about is the economy. So then I've got my second point in there about scrapping a bad tax. Then after all of that, it's literally saying, well, no, we've boosted ratings as well and people quite like us again.
Yeah.
Honestly, I will be phoning up Kemi.
Would you be really happy about
I'd be
this?
literally phoning up Kemi and going, honestly, the Independent, I know, leader, that I'm never usually giving you good news about that, but no, this, as a front page for the as any front page, let alone the Independent,
Yeah.
would be delighted with this. Genuinely delighted.
Do you wish you were still in comms just for tomorrow?
Well, just for
Just for
tomorrow.
today.
That's fine. I answered that very quickly, but with the caveat, so just for tomorrow.
Just so you
there
can
would
go.
be some-
Excellent job. Right, the Metro has gone again with that hoax. The Julia Wandelt. She's the young woman who was stalking the McCanns and claiming she's a Polish national, claiming that she was Maddie McCann, but she was also contacting the other children, the twins.
Oh, it's all just it's all so odd and so upsetting and sort of, you know, as I say, the McCann family having already had to sort of go through all of this. Was there no way to stop this?
Stop the calls.
Stop.
The
This is what I
harassment.
mean. Stop it before it
But the
got
police
to the
are not very good with
horror of
stalking, are they?
a court case, which is a whole distressing thing to go through in and of it.
Yeah.
In and of
Very
itself.
difficult. Right, the I. Badenoch's move to axe stamp duty piles pressure on Reeves' budget.
Again,
Another
brilliant,
great
love it.
headline.
Absolutely love it.
Great headline.
Does what it says on the tin. Look, and again, first bullet point, Tory leaders surprised, and by the way, they did do a really good job to have no one had an
leakage.
inkling of this at all.
No.
But Tory leaders surprised $9 billion promise to scrap property purchase tax is well received by economists, pollsters and the Conservatives. I mean, suddenly the party, you know, really is looking a little bit up on the up again. It's certainly, as I say, from everyone I've spoken to, got some pep in its step. You know, yes, helped by the fact that Labour's conference was fine.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to say it was terrible because I mean it wasn't. But it wasn't brilliant either. There was sort of a lot of flag waving and.
Yeah, there didn't seem to be any sort of big moment.
There was no big moment. I didn't think it was a great
moment.
sense of cohesiveness. And then obviously they themselves are still a little bit at 6s and 7s because they haven't got a deputy leader yet because there's still this runoff between, you know, who's going to be Angela Rayner's replacement between Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary, and Lucy Powell. And so, you know, for all of these, I was going to go months, that's being generous, years of the Conservatives being really in a pickle. I mean, the boot is somewhat on the other foot at the moment.
Yeah, it's been a good day for them.
But, you know, yes, anyone, it's obviously a Conservative sort of life for myself, or anyone who's kind of, you know, not loving what the government have been up to in the last, you know, 14 months and who reform are not appealing to, then this is great succour.
Yeah, I mean, they've also said it relieves her political fortunes and will quiet talk of a leadership challenge, is what we were saying. But it won't save her in the long term, a Tory insider says, and the Chancellor is believed to be considering a new property tax to replace stamp duty and now faces extra political pressure because of what Kemi announced. So, yeah, it's a very positive day for the Tories, but a day is just a day.
It is.
And it'll be gone like
well,
a puff of smoke
well,
by Friday.
What today's headlines are the sort of chip wrappers of tomorrow or whatever it is. I mean, just on this, that last bullet point on the front of the eye about the Chancellor is believed to be considering a new property tax to replace stamp duty. I'm not sure that's particularly what they're thinking of, as in a replacement to stamp duty. I think a lot of the signs are pointing towards some kind of revaluation regarding council tax. That
will be immensely unpopular.
It will be immensely unpopular, but I think that is more likely than some kind of replacement for stamp duty. I mean, look, they tried it out in Wales. They made various rumblings about being interested in it. I mean, it would obviously be hellish, but there is the reality that, you know, council tax is based on what sort of property prices from the early 90s. I mean, it's quite hard to argue that the system is particularly fit for
also
purpose.
I get so frustrated and angry when the Chancellor says to us that, you know, we're not going to raise your tax, like they're the only things we have to worry about. Because if people suddenly start getting an extra £2,000 or £3,000 lumped on top of their council tax because they happen to live in London, because London is the powerhouse, the economic powerhouse of the country, and people have to live here in order to feed the country the money that they need, and again being punished over that issue. And they are working people, so she's lying to us.
And putting the burden in the wrong place. Because Birmingham, let's not forget, is the second city of England. And Birmingham Council hasn't been functioning for about
it's fundamentally bankrupt.
Fundamentally bankrupt, and hasn't been functioning for about a year. So that's my point about why would it then be the council payer and not the people who are essentially meant to be responsible and, quite literally, no puns intended, accountable for the functioning of these budgets. That are the ones who will then just be expecting some government bailout when they haven't been able to, like, empty the bins for 14 months.
Exactly that. And you know, it is not the fault of the council taxpayers that Birmingham was illegally not paying equal pay for years, and they've quite rightly been told they've now got to give people reparation for that. It is not the fault, but they're now just going to say, well, we're just going to double the council tax. And so we pay for their cock-ups. And that really annoys me. It drives me nuts. But also this lie that we keep hearing, that Rachel Reeves gives a damn about what's in our pockets, when everything else she's going to scrabble around. And, you know, even if, I've been saying this, even if she decides that she's going to lower the point at which companies start paying VAT, right? There's talk about it being low to as low as 30,000 from 85,000, I think it is, and saying, well, there you go, we're just going after companies. No, because if you need the services of that plumber, or you need the services of that, you know, suddenly your bill has risen by 20%.
Yes, of course.
So it's this is what I can't bear.
I mean,
is the lies.
For anybody at any point, you know, be it somebody on kind of minimum wage or self-employed or a small business owner, like this budget coming in November is going to be horrible.
Yeah.
And anybody
because they're not considered workers.
And anybody who thinks otherwise, it's, you know, they've got the head in their sand about this. I don't think anybody anywhere, as I say, self-employed, pensioners, small business owners, anyone should be under any illusion this is going to be horrible. I'm so sorry. I was about to say I didn't mean to be quite so dramatic about that, but there's no way of
you're absolutely right.
Of sugaring that pill.
I've been calling that as well. It is going to be absolutely horrible, and yet she's going to stand there like a grinning. Oh, I won't say. But anyway, let's have a look at The Guardian before we go to the break. Ministers commit to overhaul of licensing laws in a push for growth. That's an odd front page, isn't it? Pubs, clubs and restaurants will be allowed to open into the early hours as part of a government economic growth push. That's ironic because we were talking before the programme, weren't we, Amy, about our favourite thing is getting into our PJs after 9 o'clock.
Thank you for announcing that. Sort of slightly admitted that to you, Petrie, but now you've just announced that.
Oh, come on, everybody over the age of 30 goes, do you know what? The best thing that happens to me is when an evening is cancelled.
Yes, because it's JOMO, joy of missing out, where literally I'm like, no, I really would much rather
am
be at home, like in the pyjamas, just watching some rubbish on Netflix.
Exactly that. But we'll be able to go out until 3 o'clock in the morning from now on, Amy.
Fine. Well, so look, I mean, the pub and club trade. Obviously suffered horribly during COVID and hasn't particularly recovered.
The whole of hospitality.
Yeah, and it's sort of 2 pubs a week are closing and all of this kind of, and that's because, joking aside, I mean, that's not just bad for you know going out boozing or whatever, but pubs can be a bit of a sort of focal point in the community. And
I love a pub.
Yeah, I love a pub, and certainly my very, very local, there's a couple of old boys who will go in there at 4 o'clock in the afternoon with the racing pace, and 1 pint will last them until 9 p.m. and they'll have a lovely chat to literally
and then go
everybody,
home and get into their pyjamas.
and then go home and get into their pyjamas and watch something on Netflix. So that we very much have in common. But so look, I'm not instinctively against this idea. I do think it's a bit of a sort of odd front page, and also slightly breaks, in sort of political geekery terms, slightly breaks the convention that no other political party, whether you're the government or the opposition or whoever, sort of makes policy announcements during the other person's party conference, if that makes sense.
Quite.
You kind of
it's polite.
It's polite. It's just a polite thing. It's a convention. You just kind of let whoever it is, Labour, Lib Dem, whether you're in government or opposition, you let the other guys for 3 or 4 days have like a fair run of it. And then you're back to taking pot shots out of each other.
Obviously.
Fine. But no, the idea in and of itself, if it's something that can boost the hospitality sector, then I think I would be broadly
anything that will help those hard-working people. Really, it would be a very, very good idea. But I do slightly feel a bit ill when somebody says they're heading out at midnight.
It's very odd.
It's odd. It's odd. Right. We'll take a break, and just before the break, a new line. The Israeli government expects the hostages to start being released on Saturday. So that's the latest in these peace talks. Benjamin Netanyahu is going to convene the government to approve the agreement and bring all of the hostages home. Quick break, back in a sec.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, good morning. This is Talk and it is Petrie, and with me Amy Fisher, former comms director at the Conservative Party. The Daily Telegraph, fabulous photograph there with Kemi and her husband having a hug. I didn't realise they'd worked together in the same office.
No, I haven't particularly either, but as you just said when we were on the break, and I think this is a lovely photograph. She just genuinely seemed to like her husband.
She does genuinely seem to like him.
Sometimes when you see these photos of the political spouses kind of kissing after the big speech, it's all very like, oh, are they going to headbutt? Is it going to be an awkward kiss on the cheek or a peck on the lips? But no, I think this is a genuinely lovely photo on the front of the Telegraph.
Yeah, and the headline here is, "This is the Kemi we've waited too long to see. Her pledge to abolish stamp duty will be received in my neck of the woods like like the fall of communism." So many people saying, "Thank God, you know, she's shown herself now. Don't go and hide again." Case challenges Starmer over China. This is that the Labour government refused to call China basically an enemy, and therefore the trial collapsed because there couldn't be spying if it wasn't an enemy spying.
No one's covered themselves in glory over this. I mean, former heads of MI5, you know, so Richard Dearlove, MI6, former DPPs, you know, have all sort of come out going, no, actually, it's not the CPS, it was the government. The government's been saying, oh, well, it wasn't us because it was a Conservative government who hadn't designated China as being a hostile. Because, I mean, literally everyone is in a circular firing squad of just leaving the rest of us going, well, that's fine if you guys are just, you know, can't work out who should have done what, but clearly China is a threat, and clearly two people accused of espionage, alleged espionage, whatever kind of legal language I meant to put in there, has left us exposed security-wise. So yes, whilst all of you people are busy going, it wasn't them, it was the other people, but it wasn't me, it was them, or it was the civil servants lost a file over, it was, you know, Matt Collins, the deputy security advisor, saying China wasn't. I mean, the whole thing is just an absolute mess. And as I say, all any of us can be certain of is that Britain has been left, you know, with some actually not just metaphorical egg on its face. Like there was clearly a breach of an alleged breach here of some sort, and yeah, Britain has been left looking, you know, not only foolish but weak. And with
but on the other hand, just posing this that China is since America's global power has slipped, China has become even more powerful, and we've seen the sucking up that Keir did to Trump, which still makes me feel sick thinking about it, because of the power of the US. So if you label China as an enemy state, which you would have to do to continue with this trial, are you in danger then of isolating yourself from such a powerful nation, especially one that looks likely to go for Taiwan, and there will need to be global, which is outrageous, but there will need to be global diplomacy if that eventuality happens. So I'm just posing just the devil's advocate view.
In terms of sucking it up, let's remember it was actually you know, I'm going to sort of say this, party political fairness, it was David Cameron and George Osborne, you know, back in sort of 2012, 2013, who were the ones, to use your words, sucking up to China, you know, the Belt and Road initiatives, all of this kind of thing. In 2017, was it after DC had resigned after the Brexit vote, you know, it was put in charge of a specific project to promote greater economic ties between Britain and China. So, look, in terms of kind of not necessarily recognising the threat from China, no one's coming out of this with clean hands, right?
No, it's true.
However, I think the Chinese have clearly shown themselves to be so sinister The government has in fact recognised that they do not trust the Chinese government. Let's not forget Huawei was prevented from being in 5G global network provision back in 2020. So if we're going to start niggling about dates of who knew what in 2023, when these particular alleged crimes by these two individuals who've now been let off were considered, actually, as I say, there is evidence that the government already 3 years prior clearly did not have any faith in the trustworthiness of China. Third point is then that actually, as far as I understand it, with changes that have been made to the Espionage Act, it is not the simple fact of needing to designate X country a hostile state to then allow you to prosecute.
Right.
If there is some evidence of wrongdoing, so literally stealing information or secrets of clear that could be used to the detriment of national security, that in of itself is a crime that's been committed irrespective.
Yes, because individuals can be tried for that,
and that's
as opposed
entirely
to
separate
countries.
from this argument about, oh, well,
but that's the argument they're using.
Yeah. But entirely separate from the argument that Keir Starmer has been making about, oh, well, there's nothing the government to do, its hands were tied because it was the previous Conservative government that hadn't designated China as a hostile state. So this is what I mean about it's essentially just a circular firing circle that no one's coming out of. Well, at best, was it just some kind of, mess up? At worst,
well,
was it actually
further damages.
Was it actually negligence on behalf of, the DPP or prosecutors somewhere along the line? I don't know, but the upshot is Britain both looks silly and weak, and the looking weak bit is something that obviously enemies, be it China, Russia, or any of these other people, would clearly wish to capitalise on.
Yeah, I mean, it's just. Just very quickly as well, this story on the front of the Telegraph, because I am livid about this. Digital ID will be used to access tax records. We knew already it's creeping. Already we knew it would. And Keir Starmer, even though there's been nearly 3 million signatures, is refusing to discuss this with the people. This wasn't in the manifesto. This has not been checked. This is a civil liberties thing. There should be a referendum on this.
If you want to sort of take it even one step further, look at the kind of people who they would probably get contracted in to run this. It would probably be Palantir.
Yeah.
Palantir last November, who were already given the big NHS contract. Palantir, the American sort of defence.
Yeah.
I mean, these are not people I would want to have access to any personal info.
This cannot go ahead, and already they're saying that those will be used to access our tax records as well. I think that's it. I think we've run out of time.
Oh, wow.
You're not going to get into your pyjamas early, but
no.
Thank you very much indeed for coming in,
Pleasure.
Amy. It's always lovely to see you. I do have one story that might give you